Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me, Mothers at Home Matter. I'm very grateful and happy for that. So my name is Madeleine, and I live in Sweden. And I first became a mother in 1989, and now I have 5 children between the ages of 19 and 33, 1 daughter and 4 boys. And motherhood, and I stayed at home for altogether maybe 17 years. I'm not sure exactly because I went back and forth. So, but motherhood is what made me work with these issues. And I have been campaigning for the last 22 years, both in FEFAF, which means European Federation of Parents and Carers at Home, and also a Swedish organization called HARO. So I'm the General Secretary of FEFAF, and our main goals are that first, unpaid care should be equally valued, protected, and recognized on a human, social, and economic level. And secondly, that the care that children receive, especially during the first years of life, must be prioritized. So I was asked to talk about challenges and how we can work together and learn from each other. So the challenges we see in our organization is that the work is done on a voluntary basis. So we have there is a lack of active persons because it's difficult to make this work. Time is also one of the challenges because the ones who work, they often have families and they have a job and very often also work in more than one organization. So we also have a lack of money in FEFAF, and that makes things difficult to do, to travel and to go to meetings. Fortunately, both me and the Swedish president, Caroline, we get sponsored very often from the Swedish organization. Well, we have a lack of visibility because as social media is very important, and at the moment we don't have anyone who's doing it, and lack of time. The contact persons we have, they change, and it's quite difficult when we only meet online, and also organizations, they disappear and fade out. So it's also a bit difficult to find new ones. We have got some new ones the last years, but it's not easy. We are a European federation, and it's the cultures and different languages makes the communication quite difficult sometimes. But what really characterizes FEFAF and what the assets and skills we have, it's despite that we are quite small, we are often invited to speak at seminars and meetings, and we are part of different networks. We have our focus in a quite narrow area with unpaid work and the needs of children. We have a lot of contacts around the world. We have been building networks, well, for the last more than 20 years. And that's a good thing if you have contact with people who also remain the same. The continuity is so important. I think we have a quite friendly and generous attitude, and we have a personal approach. And well, most important maybe is that what we do is based on our personal experiences. We know what we talk about, and we are quite passionate about it. It's more than a job, and we talk more about reality than statistics. 2 weeks ago, I was invited to Paris, and I was invited because they wanted someone who was more personal. So how can we work together? It's tricky because it's not easy to even keep up an organization. So then we should also turn out to be more, what do you say, extrovert, and to be in contact with other organizations. It takes a lot of time. But what we can do is to share information between one another, forward information. We can do campaigns together. For example, highlight the Invisible Day, which is the first Tuesday in April. We can make common statements for the UN. We can contact and write letters to politicians. Mothers at Home Matter contacted us. So Haro and the Swedish organization and the Danish organization, MAHM, together with a Danish professor and researcher, we wrote to the Duchess of Cambridge. And that's a very good initiative. I don't know if we got a reply.
Yeah, we did. We did get a reply. I mean, not a very cool one, but an acknowledgement. So
yeah, or maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, we could arrange conferences together, seminars. We should create a strong platform and meeting places where we can work on common themes and issues. And finally, and most important, as always, meet one another. In-person meetings, I think it's always the best, and that's where you get the real dialogue, and you get the connection in a different way. This is the second best, and it's very convenient. It's easy to reach people all around the world, but to meet in person, that's what's needed. So I hope some of the ideas is helpful.
It is so lovely to be able to connect in person, and I think it is slightly missing, isn't it? Like talking this morning to a computer is, when you're actually connecting with people in a room, it does make a difference.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really useful, Madeleine, and you put that together very, very well. I think lack of time and money is something that we all feel all the time, and I think it's really important what you're doing in the Scandinavia, because in the UK we always think Scandinavia is perfect and we should all do what you do there. But I know I spoke with you on a podcast, and we know more of the reality thanks to people like you who are talking about it. So it's excellent to have that input. Right, we're now going to hear from Valerie Bicham. How do you say it? Bicham from Make Mothers Matter.
Bicham, yeah, that's it. You did very well.
She is the Vice President of Make Mothers Matter and the main representative at the UN in Geneva. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you to MAHM for the invitation and the opportunity to speak at this annual conference. I'm really happy and honored to be part of it. So I'd like to start maybe my presentation by briefly introducing my organization, Make Mothers Matter, and then I'll go into the heart of a topic, which is to give you an international perspective on motherhood, and I will do so through a short video, which I will complete with some more recent developments. So first about Make Mothers Matter, or MMM. It's an international NGO which was created at the UNESCO in Paris in 1947, so already 75 years ago, with no political or religious affiliation. What drives us is that we believe that mothers who are recognized, supported, and informed can really be agents of change, contribute to sustainable development, and make this world a better place altogether. So our mission is to advocate for the recognition and support of mothers as such change makers, and to get governments adopt and implement mother-friendly laws and policies that will bring about some positive changes in the lives of mothers everywhere in the world. We realize our mission through advocacy and communication, as well as through our network. We do work at the international level, mainly. First, at the United Nations, we were among the first NGOs to be granted the consultative status back in 1947. And we now have the highest level of this status, which is the general consultative status with the United Nations. We also work at the UNESCO, where we have a long history of partnership, and as well as the European Union, where our work is probably the most impactful, because we can influence European directive that will in turn put obligations on member states to change their national laws and policies. To inform our advocacy work, we federate an expanding network of about 40 grassroots organizations who work with and for mothers and their children in about 30 countries across the world. And Mothers at Home Matter is one of its precious member associations. And through our advocacy, we also bring the voices of our members to the international discussions, and we seek to promote what they do on the ground as example of best practice. Maybe just to conclude this presentation on MMM, just a word on the work we do at the United Nations. It's mostly about awareness rising on mothers' issues, with a very strong focus on the issue of unpaid family care work, that you know very well, of course. Very concretely, we do that through written and oral statements in the different UN conferences. We organize events. We answer to consultation and thus try to contribute to UN reports. We also work on language. I think it's very important, so that in particular unpaid family care work is not seen framed as a burden, but as really work and valuable work. And we have been successful in removing the word burden from adopted documents, such as the agreed conclusion of the UN Commission on the Status of Women. So now moving to our topic, I will start with a short video that we prepared as an introduction to an event we organized last year on the margin of a high-level political forum, which was about changing narratives about unpaid care work and the economy. So Claire, if you could play the video, thank you. We can't hear the sound.
Is that better?
I think it's when you start to share the screen, you have an option, you have a box to tick to get the sound running.
Okay, hang on. Let me just stop that. All right.
There's a box that says to optimize sound for video right before you press the share.
Is it that? Okay, right, let's try it again. Is that working?
Yes, it works.
Okay, let's just go back.
The reality is that all over the world, there is a huge majority of women caring for theirs or for others' children, for the elderly, and all dependents. Women care for their family, and that's a beautiful and indispensable work. Women themselves sometimes do not know how much the specificity of motherhood and its unremarkable everyday life is in fact remarkable, fundamental to our future. It has a huge economic value. It has a huge impact on development. And it makes all these women actors of development and change makers.
Let's dare to utter the word mother and expand its meaning beyond kitchen and diapers. By using the word with pride, we will show all mothers who they really are and what they really do. They might have no salary for what they do for their children and little recognition, but without them, the world has no future. Care is a treasure. Caring for each other is not only necessary, it is also the one thing that makes us happy. Care is a resource. It is indispensable to support the world's economies. And care is an investment. As I said, care is crucial for a child's development. It is an investment in a child's future and therefore in our society's future. Care is indeed work. Unpaid family care work might be very hard, particularly in developing countries because of the lack of services and infrastructures, particularly also for single mothers. But it is still the most important thing there is to do, the most important work, and someone has to do it. We have to acknowledge that it's mostly mothers who do it. Mothers who fetch wood and water for their families. Mothers who take leaves to care for their children, and this was exacerbated during COVID. Mothers who take part-time jobs or temporarily leave from the labor market for childcare purposes. What kind of world do we live in when the treasure of care is counted for nothing unless it is externalized and enters the GDP? The injustice of all of this on mothers cannot be tackled if unpaid family care work is not visible.
What we want at Make Mothers Matter is for the world to be aware of how much mothers matter.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think the video already gives you an idea of what we do and what we defend at the global level, but I'd like to complete this view with a few additional comments. The COVID-19 pandemic has really hit mothers particularly hard. UN Women has published global statistics on the increase of women's unpaid care work during the pandemic with all the lockdown, and on how women were forced to give up paid work in order to assume these care responsibilities, especially childcare. And to date, many mothers still remain out of the labor force because of the pandemics. But at the same time, the pandemic has also really shed light on how essential the unpaid work of caring was for children and more generally for the well-being of people, and also on who do the majority of this work, namely women, and in particular mothers, and how it penalizes them both economically and socially. To exemplify this awareness, I'd like to quote the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He gave a lecture, which is called the Nelson Mandela Lecture in July 2020, and he said, COVID-19 has been likened to an X-ray, revealing fractures in the fragile skeleton of the societies we have built. It is exposing fallacies and falsehoods everywhere. The lie that free markets can deliver healthcare for all, the fiction that unpaid care work is not work, the delusion that we live in a post-racist world, the myth that we are all in the same boat. Because while we are all floating on the same sea, it's clear that some are in super yachts while others are clinging to drifting debris. Inequality defines our time. End of quote. So thanks to COVID, if I may say, this particular issue of inequitable distribution of unpaid care work has really gained visibility. The visibility it deserves at the global level. And I must say, since I started to work with MAHM, and it was already back in 2010, I can really witness and confirm the change in visibility. In 2010, very few people talked about unpaid care work, whereas today it's mentioned in nearly every event and every document that relates to women's rights. So this is for the good news. The problem is that first, except when it comes to maternal health, motherhood remains quite invisible. The word mother is never mentioned or written anywhere. Only very occasionally the motherhood penalty is mentioned, or maybe the case of single mothers is singled out as a category of vulnerable people. So not a very positive perspective. Second, when solutions are proposed, there are only patches to an economic and social system that simply fails to recognize the value of unpaid care work. Whereas we would really need profound systemic changes in our economic system and thinking so that it first serves the well-being of people and also the planet. Still, since 2021, there are a couple of positive developments that I would like to share with you. The first one,
Valerie, just one more minute, if you don't mind.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
The first one is the increasing recognition by UNICEF of the role of parents for child development. This is a big change. The second one is the creation of a global alliance for care. I will not give much detail about this alliance, but maybe two things about it. It promotes the principle of co-responsibility, which means shared responsibility of unpaid care work between men and women, and also shared responsibility across society. And also it promotes care as a right, the right to care and also the right to be cared for. And I think that this is something that we should really move forward with. So I will stop there. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. That was very interesting as well, Valerie. And the things that stuck out to me are the concepts of visibility and collaboration. And I think that's something that we can certainly take on board with Mothers at Home Matter. And I'll have some questions afterwards if there's time, if others aren't asking questions further on what you're saying. But let's move on to Roxana Tigelaar. She is the Mothers at Home Matter representative in the Netherlands. So Roxana, over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so I live in Holland, husband and our 6-year-old son. And I decided to stop working after I took a prolonged maternity leave, went back to work, and then decided that was not the right decision. So I've been a stay-at-home mom since. And at some point I realized a lot of the friends that I'd made, the mom friends, were going back to work or finding new jobs. And I realized I cannot possibly be the only person who's decided to become a full-time stay-at-home mom. So I took to Google, and that's how I came across the FEFAF. And also on their site, I could see that there were several European organizations that were especially for stay-at-home moms. And there was nothing in the Netherlands, but I contacted Anne, and that's how we got in contact. So since then I've been helping out with the newsletter, the LinkedIn page, and I've set up a group here in the Netherlands. It's only just starting, so I still have to actively promote it here. But I have come to realize already that it's going to be quite a challenge because I've done a bit of research in preparation of this seminar today, and it turns out that in the Netherlands we have one of the highest participation rates of women in the workforce. So 75.5% of women are working, and even after having children, 93.8% choose to continue working. So my biggest challenge in the next few months is to find the 6.2% that has decided to stay at home. And the high participation rate in the workforce in Holland has to do a lot with the policies of the Dutch government. They really want to keep women in the workforce, and they bring out an emancipation report every 2 years, in which they really highlight the importance of women to work, and they do this by the policies that they make. So this basically comes down to 3 things. The first thing is that you get very short parental leave in Holland. It's a total of 16 weeks. There's 6 weeks of pregnancy leave, which you can take before you give birth, and then there's 10 weeks after. You are free to do it as you want. So if you want to work up to the last day before you give birth, that is possible. You're flexible with those 16 weeks, but that's the maximum you get. And so a lot of small children, 2 months, 2.5 months, are being put in daycare. And daycare, that's the second thing the government is really pushing for. They're subsidizing a huge part of the daycare. Parents can benefit up to 230 hours of childcare per month per child. And the demand here is very, very high for childcare. So there's a huge waiting list. There's people that sign up as soon as they know they're pregnant, because there's sometimes a 1-year waiting list. So the short parental leave, the subsidized childcare, and then the third part is the unfair taxation system. So as a couple, you are able to do a tax declaration together, and then you get a kind of reduction in your taxes if one person is making no money or very little money. Now, that was in the past called the kitchen countertop money, or the housewife allowance. They've dropped that term completely. Now it's just a credit. But since 2009, they've been reducing that every single year, and it will completely disappear in 2024. And the reason for that is, again, because they want more women working. So they're trying to make it as unappealing as possible financially for you to stay at home. So yeah, that's from the government side. And then there's another side of the story, which is the perception in society, which is changing. And I think that's overall, that's in most countries, that it's becoming more and more the norm that women go back to work right after having children, and putting the care of children in the hands of others. It's not an exception here that, for example, children spend up to 10 hours a day in daycare. And I think that's also something that internationally would be great for us to work together, because we're clearly in the minority of wanting to stay at home and take care of our children. But if we bundle our international forces, then I'm sure we can be that voice for the women that do decide to stay at home, and also for their children, because I think that is the most important part. So that was very quickly my perspective from the Netherlands, and yeah, I look forward to any questions or discussion.
Thank you very much, Roxana. I don't know if it's a language thing, but do they actually call it emancipation report? Because that's the language of slavery, isn't it?
Yeah.
That it's basically how many women are out of slavery in the home. That's incredible. I think that says everything you need to know about the attitude there. That's really, very shocking information. Thank you for that. Right, so I'd like to open it up to the floor. Does anyone have any questions? I think you can put a little hand up, can't you? Hang on, raise a hand. You can do that if you would like to ask a question. I don't know how I put it back down again now. But anyway, ignore my hand. So does anyone have any questions? And can you remember to unmute yourself? Okay, Elizabeth. Yeah. Elizabeth?
Hi, I just wanted to turn my camera on. My name's Elizabeth, and being originally an American, but now living in the UK, I'm learning all kinds of things about being a mom at home here. And being here 14 years, I'm learning a lot more about, what the attitudes are. Do you find, this might be a question for Roxana and for Valerie, do you find in the Netherlands and France that it is almost taboo to mention that you might like to be at home, because people are so afraid to say that they might want to, because of how the government is so not for you? Does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it is frowned upon. It is, it is that whole view that the person who stays home is unambitious, and yeah, so it is something that I still get a lot of questions about what you do, and then I tell them, and it's never, oh, that's great, it's always, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely.
As for me, well, I'm French and Swiss. I haven't been living in France for many, many years, but I can talk about my experience in Germany, because my children are now, I have 3 children, they have left home. And I was living in Germany when they were young, and there it was exactly the opposite. You were frowned upon when you said you were working and not staying home to care for your children. So it also really depends on the cultural context, I think. In France, if you say you don't work, in the sense paid work, well, they turn to someone else. Basically, you're not interested. So yeah, it's really bad.
Okay, thank you for that. Louise, you've got a question. Okay.
I'm shortly going to go with Belinda Brown and my husband out to Kazakhstan to talk about sex education and promotion of family values. Valerie, how easy is it for a country to join MMM? I have no idea if Kazakhstan is part of MMM, but would that be something that would be easy to do?
We federate member associations, not, that is, grassroots NGOs, not countries. So, but any NGO from any country in the world that work with and for mothers and their children is most welcome to join our network.
So if they don't have such an organization, and as I say, I have absolutely no idea, but it's something we will be talking about, the way to do it would be to suggest that they set up their own organization for mothers. Would that be right?
Yes, absolutely. Or we also welcome individual members.
Oh, or just individual people?
Yes.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Please do not hesitate to go to our website and send us an email.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kate literally had her hand up. I can't see where she's gone
Yeah,
now.
because
Are you there, Kate? Oh, you're there. That's all right. Yes, Kate, you're next.
It was to Valerie. Things have changed because I had 3 of my children in Germany, and I noticed, we lived there for 8 years. I noticed from the beginning when we lived there to the end. By the end, when I was walking around with a pushchair, there was hardly anybody else on the streets with pushchairs anymore. Wow. Because they're going earlier and earlier and earlier to kindergarten, Krippe. And things changed in the time I was there. I saw the attitudes in women, the attitudes in everyone, and it was really quite sad. But yeah, it's going the same way everywhere is, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you for the update. Yeah, I think that the government of Germany really pushed women into paid work because there's a huge pension gap for women in Germany. It's somewhere between 40 and 50%. So it's really, really huge. They had to do something about it. I am not sure it's the right thing to do to push women in the labor force, but at the same time, it's not the right thing to do to frown upon women because they want to work. So the choices should be respected, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Anne.
Just following that, I heard actually recently that Germany offer quite a lot of money to be able to stay at home now. I don't know if they've suddenly changed their minds at all, because I know their birth rate is really quite low, and I think there is a stay-at-home parent allowance now, I think. I need to look into it myself, because I heard someone say that the other day and I thought, oh really, wow. So I don't know if the tide is changing, because I think so many people now have gone back to work and they don't have any, they don't want to be at home, they don't want to have children either. So I think that might be a problem. The other thing I just wanted to raise is particularly Roxana, you talk about finding the 6%, but one thing I've just sort of recently discovered is that actually we need to talk to the people who would like to be at home and reach out to them. So it's not just about finding the ones who are there, but for the ones who would like to be but are either too scared or just feel that they can't financially do that. I think that's where I'm finding that we also here in England need to do and really reach out to those mothers.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's also important. That's also with what I was saying with LinkedIn earlier, where we can also find possibly new members and give support to those women. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, if anyone else got a question, otherwise I'll go. Oh yeah, Cordy down here.
Hi everyone, I'm Cordy. I'm completely new to this, so forgive me if this is kind of an ignorant question, but one thing that I get really sort of wound up about is in the press, like so many sort of columns of, you know, the cliche of the mum hitting the Chardonnay at 4 p.m. and being so strung out. And there was actually an article, I can't remember if it was in the Times or the Guardian the other day, but it was a kind of op-ed by one of their regular columnists who's a mum. And she was sort of doing the usual kind of, oh, it's so awful to be a stay-at-home mum and desperate to get back to work, etc. And the comments had been turned off. Like there wasn't an ability to comment, which I found really strange, because they normally only do that when it's some kind of trial or something that they know everyone's gonna. So I thought, wow, that's really. And but yeah, I guess I kind of be interested to know how much you as an organization, or organizations I should say, are doing to kind of change this public, you know, change the public kind of perception, because I feel like that has so much, goes so far in people, you know, feeling proud or not proud to be looking after their own children.
Could I suggest, Madeleine, would you like to speak about that, please?
Yes, sure. Thank you. And also I want to say something about the question of Elizabeth, because in Sweden and the Nordic countries, it's quite difficult to be a stay-at-home mother. You have to defend your choice, and it's not seen as a good thing. You are betraying the gender equality and feminism. But so I forgot the question.
I guess just in terms of what's being done to try and sort of shift the tide.
Yeah, actually, we have been, at least in Sweden, we have had a lot of opportunities to be in media. Last year or 2 years ago, I was in a big interview for half an hour in the main media, and we have been a lot in both on TV and invited to talk about it. But I wouldn't say it's both. I think we are more respected today in the media, especially after the pandemic and that we raised the unpaid caregiving work. But still, it's like a fight between women. It's like you are either for or against. You cannot be both. You cannot choose to have the possibility to have the choice. That's what we have to raise, and also not to talk about that it's women and mothers who make the choice, but rather talk about the needs of children and talk about it in a different way, in a different manner. That's what we have been doing, at least.
Following on from that, can I just ask you, Madeleine and Valerie, how you managed to get a seat sort of at the UN and in the heart of policy making? Were you invited in, or did you? I mean, is there a European directive that says you have to be included, or how did that happen?
We have an accreditation. I know that Valerie, she's really very active at the UN in Geneva because she lives there. But we have an accreditation, and it's possible to make statements and to participate at meetings. And what I have seen, if I compare to the European Union, we are welcome, because very many people who work at the UN, they do it for a good reason. It's not only a job for many people. They really are for human rights. So people are welcome to speak up.
Mm-hmm. Valerie?
Yeah, in order to be able to participate in UN conference and bring the voice of mothers, you need to be accredited for that. So you need to apply for consultative status. It's a procedure, but as an NGO, you're perfectly entitled to do it. Mothers at Home Matter could apply for a consultative status. And any NGO can apply. And as Madeleine said, NGOs are usually welcome by UN staff in particular. It's more difficult with member states, obviously, especially certain member states. And the problem with the UN is that it is member states. It is run, and decisions are made by member states. So it's really important to also have direct contact with member states. When we managed to remove this word burden from the agreed conclusion of CSW, it was through direct lobbying. Once it was to the Swiss government, the other times it was to the Danish governments, and there's no other way to do it.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think unless there are any other questions, we probably need to start wrapping up. So I'd like to thank all the speakers for your time, which we all know is a very short supply, and for collaborating with Mothers at Home Matter and bringing your expertise and your experience. And let's hope that we can all have some good news soon about the rights of mothers, or the choices of mothers to be able to stay at home in a funded way rather than unfunded, that actually it's recognized across the European Union and the world as the valuable choice that the Make Mothers Matter video showed. So so I'd like to conclude there and hand back so that you can we can all take part in the next seminar. Thank you very much.